Metta isn't like that automatic, we sacrifice ourselves for everybody. We bring like an intelligent overview as to what's in everyone's best interest. So a warm welcome to Dharma Night, to all of you tuning into this recording. Tonight we continue on a series based on a teaching of the Buddha called the Karaniya Metta Sutta. So it's the Buddha's teaching in 10 verses on metta. And I'll just do a very slight recap. The word Karaniya means let him or let them do. So it's quite a sense of an invitation. So this is the Buddha's advice for, and there's a respect in it for people to take responsibility for themselves and decide whether they're going to follow the Buddha's advice. So it's not a command, it's not a commandment. And it starts out, the first sentence is for him or them, they who are skilled in their good. So it starts out with how we really need to know what is good for us. That if we're wise enough to know what is good for us, then this is the condition to start practice metta and to follow the Buddha's advice. And that's quite a skill. That takes quite a lot of perception about ourselves. Another translation says, if you know what's good for you, what's truly good for you. And I just think, well, that's quite an achievement, to really know what's good for us and to follow that. That's very much what the Buddha asks us to do, to really look at what's good for us and to follow that path. And through the weeks, we've been exploring the different stages of this short discourse. So we started out with looking at what conditions we need to have in place in our life that will support the practice of metta, such as looking at our behavior, the way we speak, to be capable and content. I mean, they're quite high qualities, and in a way, they come through practicing metta, but they're beautiful qualities to reflect on. And then the last week or so, we've been looking at more the center of the sutra, where the Buddha talks about how to practice metta. And so this is more in a meditation practice, where he's suggesting we bring different categories of people to mind, which many of us are familiar with the Metta Bhavana practice. And tonight we're going to look at 3 verses that I find really beautiful and inspiring. And in a way, it's kind of the culmination of this beautiful teaching. And I'll just read them out. Just as a mother would protect her only child, at the risk of her own life, even so, let them cultivate a boundless heart towards all beings. Let their thoughts of boundless love pervade the whole world, above, below, and across, without any obstruction, without any hatred, without any enmity. Whether they stand, walk, sit, or lie down, as long as they are awake, they should develop this mindfulness. This, they say, is the noblest living there. So, in these paragraphs, the Buddha starts out with quite a striking image. So, a mother protecting her only child, even at the risk of her own life. And I think that's something we could all connect with. We might not all have children, but we all have mothers, and there's something quite a strong energy to that. I think that we could connect with, and that even extends to the animal kingdom. So, ideally, animals protecting their young, nurturing their young. We're following this book in this series called Living with Kindness. And on the cover, there's a very beautiful photograph of a mother elephant with her young elephants. And this type of love has certain qualities that are quite relevant to Metta. So there's the quality of nurturing and helping the young to develop, which is a very important aspect of Metta, that we're wishing those we direct Metta to grow and develop and mature, become stronger. So there's that quality that a parent ideally could bring to a child. So it's a very striking image that way. Also, there's the responsibility a parent could take for just having an overall sense of what's in the child's welfare. And you could also see that analogy in terms of other people in our lives that might look after us, like doctors or teachers. They need to they take on the responsibility of having an overview and really taking in what someone needs. So these are very important qualities. Now, this image of the mother and child is also very interesting because it brings to mind what's known as what's the near enemy of Metta. So a near enemy is something that seems like that quality but isn't quite that. So there's a word for it in Pali, the Buddha's original language, called pema, which means more of like a sentimental attachment. So there can be in human relationships, I guess, a confusion of love with wanting people to do what we want them to do, such as a parent expecting something from their child back from what they do for them, or we do that in all sorts of relationships. And and there's also this exclusivity around family bonds, or these warm circles of affection and friendship we make that could turn out in enmity to people outside that circle. It's the way we come together in protecting ourselves, perhaps, in what we see as this cold world outside. And there are some positive emotions in it. As I've said, this nurturing and wanting people in our family to grow and develop, taking responsibility. It's seen as a positive social emotion by the Buddha. And that might be surprising for some people, because I think some people might have the view of Buddhism that the Buddha was quite anti-family. There's a legend that the Buddha left his wife and his child. But actually academicians say that there's no real evidence, really historically, that the Buddha even had a wife and child. It's just a kind of symbol for perhaps distinguishing worldly love from the spiritual love. But the Buddha himself laid great emphasis on taking parents and children looking after themselves and looking after family members, and that this was something that supported society. But you could probably see these positive aspects of that as a starting point for Metta. So what's best in these relations? To be a starting point to transcend the self, to move into what in the verses, he very quickly goes from the love of the mother for the only child to a boundless love for all beings. And it's quite a paradox, because that's quite an intense, focused love, the love of a mother for a child. And then it's switched almost completely outwards to a boundless love for all beings. And that's where we go into to these qualities of Metta that builds on this love for the child. The Buddha talks about sacrifice, the mother sacrificing. So there's this quality of selflessness that also comes into, our human love, our human connections, particularly a parent or a mother for a child. But with metta, it's not like we just sacrifice ourselves for people. We need to bring in wisdom. There's this famous story that a Buddhist teacher brought out, a traditional story of bandits capturing 4 people and telling them only 3 of them could survive, and they had to choose. One person had to choose who was going to survive and who wasn't. And it wouldn't automatically be in everyone's best interest for the person whose choice it was to self-sacrifice. That's not, metta isn't like that automatic, we sacrifice ourselves for everybody. We bring like an intelligent overview as to what's in everyone's best interest. So there's that, again, coming and bringing in wisdom, seeing the bigger picture, taking responsibility. And then the verses go on to pervading the whole world, above and below and across, without any obstruction, without any hatred, without any enmity. So this is a way of living, but it's also very much relates to the Metta Bhavana, the last stages of the Metta Bhavana, where we bring different people to mind in each stage. Ourselves, a good friend, someone we don't know well, a difficult person, someone we find difficult. And then we're trying to cultivate the sense of equal regard for all 4 and then send it out to the world. And this is where the kind of impersonal aspect of metta comes in, how metta transcends the individual. So we need these individuals to get our emotions engaged, to practice metta. But really metta itself is a quality that is far beyond the self, that transcends the self. And our teacher has a beautiful description relating it to the sun. And if I could find my glasses, yes. It's, he says it's like the sun, and the sun goes on shining, whether or not anything is there to receive its rays. If a planet happens to be in the path of the sun's rays, it is bathed in that light. Otherwise, the sunlight just continues to stream through space. In the same way, if someone comes into the orbit of your metta falls upon them. If no one is there to receive it, metta just carries on infinitely throughout space, as it were. So there's a sense of momentum that we build in with practice. So again, this is training, like with everything else in Buddhist practice. We practice and train, and it builds a momentum. And then the last paragraph, whether you stand, walk, sit down, or lie down, as long as you're awake, to develop this mindfulness. This again is a way of life. It's not just a meditation. It's something we practice. It's like mindfulness, where we bring mindfulness to our actions, to what we eat. We also bring mindfulness to cultivating metta in our life. And they say this is the noblest living here. Another translation is they say this is heaven right here on this earth. So again, it comes back to knowing what is good for us, that if we practice in this way, it brings us a tremendous happiness in ourselves. So those are a few things about these beautiful verses, and I'll turn to my friend Amladana here, and maybe he might have a few things to say about that. Amladana, I mentioned a whole variety of metta and relationships and parents, children, or family relationships. And I know you're a parent, and you have children. I'm just wondering if you have a particular take on that part of the verse, with a mother or a parent protecting their only child.
Yeah, I think certainly in terms of my children and the way Sue brought them up, and together with me, I wanted that nurturing that she brought over and above actually my natural tendencies. She is very. I mean, I saw her selflessness in giving up things for them. And I was very appreciative of that, and it sort of showed me a degree of metta which I need to develop, or the love I need to develop for my children. But I think in Buddhism, I do see how that's sort of ring fenced. That attention is sort of ring fenced, and in a way, it's selfish in that respect. In that it can be, it can limit us in terms of how we relate to others. But it's not that simple, because in a sense you need to practice something in order to be able to take it out to others.
Yes. I mean, it's quite a maturing experience. I'm not a parent myself, but I have tremendous admiration for parents. And I know Sangharakshita said how maturing being a parent can be, in terms of that selfless, just not having what you want when you want it. And he recommended that if people didn't have children, that they go into a community, where you share resources, and you have that experience of, thinking of more of the common good, because, we can have life quite easy as Westerners without children, just having things the way we want it all the time, living on our own or just living with one other person. So there's, it's just really important to bear in mind all those positive qualities that come into, just what, regular human affection and family affection, and then see that as a starting point to build on. I guess what it is we're not stopping there. Yeah. We're not, we're valuing it, we're really appreciating it, but then there's something beyond that.
Yeah, and we're using it as an example which maybe people have come into contact with, either with the family, or, as you said, with the medical profession or the caring professions, or just people generally, being selfless, and how warming that experience is. So people do come into contact with it. But I love when you read that, and when I read the chapter in the book. I love the way it just showed how the metta bhavana itself is like a path in itself, isn't it?
Yes.
Where you bring your attention to different aspects of your contacts, and you try to bring a different perspective in how you look at them, to think of them more as you look at yourself, and then you expand it sort of limitlessly.
Yes.
And I think the verses that you read were just so challenging, and it's strange, isn't it? Because it's asking for us to be, to develop a love like a mother for a child, her only child, and then for that love to be boundless.
Yes.
And then for us to practice this constantly.
Yes.
So it's pretty sort of pretty challenging, and I think the thing I find quite sort of subtle in a way is that the opening expression, let them practice in this way. It's a very gentle invitation to take on these ideas.
Yes.
And I suppose that we need to appreciate that we can't do it all in one go. It's as you say, it's a lifelong development.
Yes, and it takes really taking on board that it's good for us too. It's that we really need to get behind that. It's really what it makes us truly happy, is to move in this direction, and which can seem counterintuitive, but there's another famous text, the Bodhicharyavatara, where there's this verse is, unhappiness is just being obsessed with my own my own happiness, and happiness is wanting others to be happy. That's where the true happiness lies. But it's so hard for us to see, and I guess it goes against our survival instinct, you know, where we're seeing threat. So we're working against a lot of intuitive, ingrown, instinctual stuff.
Sort of animal stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. And, you know, animals in the animal kingdom would fight to protect their young or whatever, you know. And, you know, we can fight to protect our groups, etc. And it's not a way to happiness, though. You know, it's kind of an ingrown, you know, it's in our DNA. Yeah. But you know, we're moving to this incredibly beautiful quality of radiant, boundless love, which makes me think of the sun. And I'm feeling very cold right now. But I feel warmed thinking about it. It's this beautiful, radiant sunlight that's equal in all directions.
I mean, I love that image, actually. That image, and also I'm probably going to forget the expression now, but where he talks about Metta, it's really about what Metta's like, you know, and how it's. I think you mentioned it was impersonal.
Yes.
And it's as if when we practice, we're trying to come into connection with it, and to see others through that lens.
Yes.
And it's not a possession of ours. It's something we take part in.
That's right.
And that's such a lovely, and it's so true to our experience, isn't it? Because when we do have a stranger who just does something completely unexpectedly considerate of us, you know, even if it's just a smile. Yes. It's just so warming, and it's not because you've got anything. It's just a connection.
Yes.
And there's this idea of what was the expression he used? It was it's like Metta is a medium in which our consciousness can move. Yes. Which I think is I really like that metaphor, simile, whichever it is. Yeah.
But we need to. Really understand why and where it's going. This is why I just think it's so meaningful. I'm so appreciating this series to really understand why we're doing it and where it can lead, and you know what the Buddha said about it. That it's beyond meditation on it is important, but reflection and talking and trying to understand this. What we talked about last week is bringing in reason and wisdom along with this positive emotion.
I like the sort of, I'm not quite sure exactly what the link is, but there's this sort of link between faith and wisdom, or a path between the two, where you know, when we see, you know, you say some of the teaching seems to be almost counterintuitive. Yes. But we know that if we think back through examples, that if we have been more selfless, we'll be more happy. And if we haven't actually gone out and built that sort of circle around us, but we've extended it a bit, then that's where we get real happiness from. Yeah. And to take those steps is like, you know, faith. But when you can actually intuitively behave in that way fully, then I guess that's, you know, you're moving into the realms of wisdom. Yeah.
Or having faith that it works, even if it doesn't seem, you know, because we're training and it's step by step, but having faith in our efforts that they will, and that many people have practiced Metta over the centuries, and it is out there in the universe. We see it in people's smiles or whatever. There is this quality of Metta that is also this beautiful enlightenment quality that's symbolized by this beautiful golden yellow figure called Ratnasambhava, who relates to the noonday sun. So the noonday sun shines equally. There are no shadows. And his female counterpart, called Mamaki, is, you know, this female has mama in her name, which I find so interesting. And her name means mind making. So it's everything is hers. Everything is loved. Not just this one thing that's mine. It's mine making, you know, this love of everything.
It's I mean, and it's almost it's very enticing, isn't it? That idea, and it's beautiful, you know. But on the other hand, it's so it's beyond our sort of mental ability to actually
Yes.
grasp that. We can't actually intellectually understand it.
No, and that's the thing. We can't. We have to open up to this a receptivity beyond the self, and that's what the practice opens up to. And in the end, the practice. But maybe we'll talk more about that next week.
Yeah.
Great, so I hope you enjoyed that Dharma Night talk. So if you did enjoy it, if you're enjoying our videos, I just want to ask you or encourage you to think about making a donation to the Brixton Buddhist community. We're a UK charity that relies completely on your donations to run everything here. And if this was a meditation class, there'd be a donation bowl that you could just put in £10 at the end of the night to help support the activities. But as you're watching this online, I just want to ask you to think about making an online donation. If you've watched 4 or 5 videos this month, maybe you might want to think about giving £10. So there's a link in the description below where you can go to our website and make a donation. And if you want to keep giving and you don't want to worry about making that donation every month, well, you could just set up a standing order, a monthly standing order. That would be really, really helpful. I want to suggest something of the region of maybe £10 or £20 a month if you're able to do that, and that would be really, really helpful and help us keep producing videos like this one. Thanks for listening. Take care of yourself.